What do we do when we have such dilemmas is precisely that we as Christians, as people who are informed not by ideology but by reality and the need to improve on it, is to find ways to actually address these issues rather than to say we already do the best or that one shoe fits all, such as give every child a computer and they're fine. They all give them all an internet and they all have all the information they need, when they've never been given the tools of how to analyze the information. They've been given the tool as to what button to push, what images to draw on, but not how to select carefully, critically between the information that is thrown at them. We not only have that kind of systemic utopia in our culture, which we need to address and deal with, and it's serious, but also a more personal utopia. And that is when we begin with concepts and presuppositions, expectations, as it were, to which we expect everything to be sacrificed. Such as when we enter life with a single purpose, assuming that reality is not as complex as it is. That's when people assume, for instance, what their marriage is going to be like. Well, they better wake up to the reality that every day in a marriage is also a surprise. Sometimes a disappointment, always a challenge. It cannot be planned ahead of time. It needs to be dealt with in the confidence of a commitment to each other to build a relationship over a lifetime, like an artist dealing with stone, chiseling away and away until the form becomes more clear of what he had in mind. And it takes a lifetime. I cannot from the outset say I'm going to have a marriage in which each person has a career and we're going to have some children. That only exists in a dream, not in the real world. It doesn't work. The real world is already defined. Any perspective that plans a dream and then imposes it on the marriage demands a sacrifice, and often it's the sacrifice of the marriage as one partner walks out on the other or as the children are abandoned to some non-English speaking nanny. Or when I set out to expect perfect health or a body shape modeled on Greek ideal measurements, or the pleasure principle. I'm always going to have fun. My job has to be fun, my location has to be fun, my friends have to be fun. We forget when Jefferson wrote, the pursuit of happiness was his happiness, not happiness itself. He drew on Aristotle, who first says, indeed, that our pleasure is found in the pursuit of happiness. Because nobody can define what happiness is. Happiness does not stand still. Happiness is not a location. It is not a once-for-all sensation. The pursuit of happiness that Jefferson spoke about is the freedom to be a tobacco-growing gentleman who reads the Bible and thinks political thought on the basis of his Greek education, and is concerned for the well-being of his neighbors. Mind you, even he made a mistake when he still kept slaves. Yet nevertheless, it was precisely not a blueprint for all of life. It was dealing with the real world and seeing what was possible in temporary, partial improvements within the boundaries of that possible. I illustrated it last time with this experience that we had a week before over at the West Side Barnes & Noble when Tony Amato from the Amato Opera, that is unhappily for us, closed, an opera company on the Bowery, where for 50 years Tony Amato, an Italian singer, started an opera company many years ago on a brownstone house, hollowed out with a stage, narrow and short, with a 5-people orchestra sitting underneath when the musicians showed up. Otherwise, he would hum one of the instruments along, and he would put on full-length operas. Well, this Tony Amato is retired, and he published a book on the history of the Amato Opera with pictures. And this was going to be the presentation of the book, and the evening occurred, and he was too ill to come. He may well be dying, we are told. And that's far from ideal. It would have been ideal to see Tony Amato present his book and the story of his marvelous invention of the Amato Opera here in New York. I, by the way, read about it in the German newspaper once, about 15 years ago, so I knew about it. But he wasn't there, so the next best thing occurred. what is possible in such less than ideal situations. And that is that all those there, many of whom had sung for him through the years, and opera lovers, and people who knew him, and so forth and so on, all got together and reminisced of their time when they were together with Tony Amato. That's what we deal with, not utopia. That's, you know, the best of all possible, of the best of all imaginable, but rather dealing with the best of all possible in marriage, in career, in health, in shape of body, in pleasure, in money, in the pursuit of things, etc. All we have is this moment with its possibilities. We cannot make the future present. We must not make the future or the ideal static. That's what Plato wanted for the sake of order. That's what Hitler wanted by getting rid of everybody he didn't like by his own definitions, which was terribly cruel. That's what people do when they walk out of their marriages or when they abandon their children because it doesn't fit into their image.